to paint a picture on your knee of your loved one. Hello, and today I'm with this mystery box. What happened was that I have, well, confession time, I have a vintage button habit, and to feed it I thought, I wonder about online sale rooms, and I had a look and I found a fabulous collection of buttons, and they went for crazily over the assessed price, presumably because there are people out there with a more extreme vintage button habit than myself even. And then I had a call out of the blue from a sale room in Edinburgh, which is about 6 hours drive from me, saying, what do you want us to do with the items you bought? And I had a sketchy memory of putting in the lowest possible bid on a collection of things because they had some vintage gloves in there. I'd forgotten all about it. So it kind of gave me a bit of a surprise, not in a good way. So I thought, how on earth am I've got all this stuff that's in Edinburgh, how do I get it to me? Anyway, there are couriers. It cost me to courier this stuff here, but I thought it would be fun to have a look through and see what I bought. So, opening up, aha, here are gloves, and these are, they're beautiful. They are, I can see little holes, they're a little damaged. I'll put a little close up on screen because the back of those gloves is exquisite. I would say, and look at the little scalloped cuffs too, I would say Victorian. Got quite small hands, I can usually get these on, but because it's this area around the wrist that always strains when you're trying to get your hand through, and it's a bit damaged already, so I usually damp the gloves a bit to stretch them before trying, and I think with those I won't take the risk. Another pair of beautiful Victorian gloves, need a bit of a clean, but they always do. I'm going to try and get my hand into these. Is it going to go? It is going to go. And yeah, they're lovely, very pretty. I mean, they're not quite as pretty as the others, but they're not damaged, and they're beautiful, so I'm pleased with those. I'm going to ease them off really carefully because I don't want to damage them. They're like paper thin leather. There we go. Oh, I think it's a christening dress. It is a christening dress. I don't use them anymore, and they're so absolutely exquisite work. All quite delicate, all hand embroidered. I never know what to do with these. They're not worth very much because people don't want them. Beautiful cotton lawn embroidery down the front. I never cut them up and repurpose them. I don't know. I've never liked to. If you have any ideas, do let me know. Ooh, these black things. This is seriously exciting. They're silk stockings. Beautiful silk stockings. Oh my gosh. I'll try them on and show you what they're like. And they're perfect. And then what have we here? These are step-ins, 1920s, because they really stopped making undergarments like this by the late 20s. Underwear. So these ones open at the back, so you the back? Yes, you unbuttoned at the back and pull them down. And so this, oh, they put so much work into things, and beautiful hand embroidered front, all this lace, tiny, tiny buttonhole stitches. How many hours, hours and hours and hours for their undergarments that no one saw. Ooh, a petticoat. Quite a well-worn, well-loved petticoat with beautiful hand-worked buttonhole stitch around all this cut work. It's kind of damaged at the hem, a bit stained, damaged at the waist, but clearly because it's been well worn and well loved, which kind of gives me permission to do the same. And I have decided to bring back for myself the wearing of petticoats in winter, particularly because every layer makes you warmer. Because I'm going to launder those and I will actually wear them. What's up next? More step-in drawers. Again, beautiful work at the front. All this scalloped neckline. It's all been done by hand in tiny buttonhole stitches. It's got its buttons down the front, and it's got the open crotch so that you could turn up your skirts and go to the loo. On and a little lingerie bag, Scottish thistle, and I'm thinking I did get these things from Edinburgh, so presumably from a Scottish lady. And this must be her, EB. Little napkin, stained but definitely 1940s. It's got that little crinoline lady that I love and is so distinctive of the 40s. And she's embroidered her initials really carefully, hand embroidered her initials, EB. So whoever EB is, I will be looking after your things and treasuring them. This is those of table linen for quality, mainly quite stained, which I actually have no compunction because it's not hand embroidered. Actually saying that, it's lovely little embroidered detail. It's the kind of thing I might rework into a little pocket or a collar for a vintage dress. More linens I will rework into a dress or a blouse because the quality of the linen is lovely. I did remember something about buying a kilt, and this does come from Edinburgh after all. Goodness, it weighs a ton. It's the last thing in the box, and here we are. I would say, my goodness, I would say this is a man's kilt in black watch tartan. Look at those pleats in perfect condition. Wow. So I think what I'm going to do now to show you anything that I can try on, I will. So this is my button through step in. Lots of ease of movement, as you can see, light and airy. One could say baggy, but you could certainly dance in it. And the legs reach down to just above the knee. And here I am with the Edwardian petticoats. And it has a drawstring waist which you just tie up so that you can adjust the gathers round the back because a little fullness at the back of the skirt was desired for the Edwardian look, and it reaches just above my ankles. And here I am in the drop waist step in with the button through back. It just reaches to just above my knee, and I only gave a very quick glimpse of the back because it was a bit gapey like a hospital gown. And here I am trying on the stockings, the lovely black silk patterns stockings. And I hope you can admire my ability to stand like a stork on one leg to put each of them on. And it's such a pretty pattern. And you can just imagine dancing the Charleston in these. And now for my kilt, which shares the same kind of thought process as the step-ins, because there was a belief that one's nether regions need to be aired, and showing off the back of the kilt with all its lovely pleating. I wore it with a 20s ruffled blouse and a 40s tilt hat, and I think the sort of mishmash outfit kind of works. And I'm wearing my black stockings. And now to look at the history of what I've bought. So in the early 1900s, these combinations had quite kind of wide, frilly legs, and they were decorative. About 1910, the legs were slimmer and straighter. The crotch area was usually just left open. Then about 1915, they started to put like snap fasteners around the crotch area. This is really a very practical response to skirts becoming shorter, because obviously when you had a long skirt, having a step-in or a combination with an open crotch was fine if you had a skirt reaching to the floor. But once your skirt was on your knee, you were dancing, you wanted a closed crotch area. Actually, one of my step-ins, the ones with the button down the front, has got an open crotch, so maybe that was the time up to about 1915. That was a kind of slightly earlier one. And I do think that my step-ins were of the daily practical kind, because they're in cotton and decorated with that lovely embroidery, but quite simple. By the 1920s, when step-ins were at their most popular, older women were probably still wearing corsets, but the young flappers wanted a lighter, area undergarment they could dance in. And in fact, while their mothers might insist they wore a corset out, there are actually in many dance halls corset check-ins where you can leave your corset for the night, dance the night away, and then pick it up on the way out. So in the 1920s, we tend to think of almost like an adolescent boy's figure. Oh, Wheezy! Squeaking her ball. So it was certainly the case that slimmer women were less likely to wear a corset, but if you had any little chubbiness on the tummy, you might want a little something to hold it in. And the 20s shape was really a crazy. It's not good now. Mum's filming. So the 20s shape really was like a tube. So although between 1920 towards the end of the 20s, corset sales actually dropped by 2/3, but the corset companies adapted by making what's known as a corselet, which created the tube shape that was so popular in the 20s. It's interesting now that I often see that in the vintage and historical costuming community that the 1920s is actually rarely taken up. It doesn't seem that popular, even though we have Downton Abbey. And I think it's because that kind of boyish silhouette with the bandeau bra, the sort of rectangular, or even like a Symington bra that laced women in, straight, kind of slightly flat, kind of boyish silhouette, is the absolute opposite now of the Jessica Rabbit-like figure that is popularized by style, such as Kim Kardashian. But you know, the 1920s, maybe it's due for a revival, because those boyish figures and the sort of light airy step-ins like the one I have, they were very symbolic of freedom. And in fact, it's not the case that they just suit very young, slim women. That kind of tube shape and lack of waist. There was actually a figure type catered to in Lucia's catalogues, known as, my mum calls herself, she'll kill me, stout. There was the, she was thinking of stout, but maybe the figure type is quite similar. Slightly waistless, I guess. But nevertheless, do you always want to cinch in your waist? It's never the most comfortable feeling. So if you were going to wear a corselet in the 20s, you would wear it over the step-in, and how drastic your corselet was would probably depend on how much tummy fat you were holding in. Just a little bit. You might have a stretchy corselet. For more squishiness to be held in, you might have something made of a fur fabric to hold you in. And likewise with your bandeau bra, the more well endowed you were, the tougher the fabric would be. And indeed, there were quite a few complaints of the 20s that things in that area weren't as perky as before. They were held in by the bandeau bra, were squashed in. Whether that was to do with squashing, or to me seems more likely it was lack of support. So my step-ins, as you saw, had one with a closed crotch, which buttons at the back. And if I'm honest, it wasn't that easy getting into it. The only opening was round the back. So I did manage to get into it by pulling on the top over my head and kind of managing to get my legs through the drawer area. But I think the idea of the step-in was literally, of course, that you stepped in. That one wasn't that easy. The other one with the open crotch and the buttons all the way down the front, obviously that was very easy to get into. Those were the step-ins, weren't they, Treacle? Yes, they were. Thank you for oh, you're right. Yes, Treacle's reminded me that I haven't talked about the stockings, my lovely decorative stockings. And you would have your girdle with a suspender belt and attach your stockings to it. And stocking, they came in all colours, kind of flesh colours, although flesh colours made for white women, not much catering to anybody else. I hope you can't hear the dog huffing and puffing in the background. She's planted this ball on my lap. So, very off-putting, very off-putting, rabbit. Where was I before you planted your ball on my lap? Eh? Stockings. Very off-putting. Stockings could be very decorative, like mine. They were often made of silk or rayon, and they were either attached to your suspender belts from your girdle, or if you were a flapper, probably a young slim flapper that didn't wear a girdle or any kind of structured undergarments, you might roll your stockings. So I'm thinking of the song, you know, I won't sing it to you because I literally have got a singing voice, like slightly croaky cat with a sore throat, tail's been trodden on, but all that jazz, you know, I'm going to rouge my knees and roll my stockings down. And in fact, this was a trend, because if you rolled your stockings, I did try this actually, it is a bit uncertain how well it works. Rosie, can you not do that on camera? No, there are some things you don't do in public. So there was a fashion to roll your stockings below your knee and then rouge your knee. And there was even, a short-lived, oddly enough, trend to paint a picture on your knee of your loved one, or perhaps a famous Hollywood actor that you had a crush on, such as maybe Rudy Valentino. So that wasn't a trend that lasted, and I'm not absolutely convinced about having a man's face painted on your knee, but there you go. Maybe the face of your loved one. So you might roll your stockings, and you might, rather saucily, oh, I quite like this trend, you might hold them up with a garter. So yes, I think my stockings, they're in such beautiful condition that I have a feeling, like many of us, she kept them for best and maybe didn't wear them. Because stockings were silk from that era, you certainly didn't buy them and throw them away. You mended them, and you can still buy mending threads for stockings that are in those colours. So a good, respectable girl might have her stockings held up kind of out of sight under her dress and then held in place with the suspenders attached to a garter belt. But a naughty flapper might just have her stockings rolled up to her knee and then held in place by a decorative garter. There were even metallic ones made in gold and silver. I think that's quite a cute trend that could do with the revival. So I'm pretty sure that my oh no than my so I'm pretty sure my petticoat actually dates from around the time of 1910, that pre-First World War Edwardian era, because it's long, and of course 1920s hemline were higher, and it also has all the features of a petticoat around that era. It has a drawstring, so what you would do is adjust your gathers to go round your waist towards the back, where they liked to create a little bit of fullness. And eyelet embroidery, which is on that petticoat, was really fashionable around that 1910 time. The thing that I think comes from a much earlier era are my gloves, and especially these ones that were slightly damaged at the wrist. They are a classic design from the mid-1900s, around 1850, because they have the cutwork embroidered detail across the top of the hands, and they have those pinked edges at the cuffs. The colour, the gloves were always kind of neutral colours at that time, and perfectly tailored to fit glove. That was a sign of being a true lady at that time. In an era where it was difficult for women particularly to say what they want, gloves allowed you to use a secret language. And it was in 1890, there was an article written outlining what the secret language of gloves was. If you twirled your gloves in your hand, it sent a signal to somebody that we're being watched. Or on the other hand, if you held your gloves in your left hand but made sure that your left thumb was exposed, that was a way of asking, do you love me? If you held your gloves in your right hand but again with your thumb exposed, that was a way of saying kiss me. If you sort of struck your gloves subtly over your left shoulder, that was a signal, follow me. Less happily, if you might be quite satisfyingly, if you sat in company and then turned your gloves inside out, that was a way of saying I hate you. Alternatively, you could drop both your gloves, which was a signal, I love you. I could go on. I guess the only thing to talk about quickly now is the black watch tartan man's kilt that I found in my mystery box. So in 1725, following the Jacobite rebellions of 1715, an assortment of watch regiments, help me. An assortment of watch regiments patrolled the Highlands to prevent clans fighting and to generally prevent crime. And they wore the black watch tartan of dark blue, green and black. They wore it with very fancy red waistcoat and red jacket. And these watch regiments, oh, I can say it, these watch regiments lasted all the way from 1725 to 1940. And I have to say, rather a fancy and wonderful look for men, I think. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye. You're going to sleep now. Stop filming. I see. Tummy rubs.